Bombing was a way of life in Birmingham. On any given day, we could be sitting on our porch or playing in our yard as children, and we would hear that sound. We had come to know the sound of the bomb. And when we heard that sound, an immediate reverence of sorts would come over us, and we'd all go sit on the porch because we knew within a few moments we would hear the phone ring. And the caller on the other end would say, "They just bombed Attorney Arthur Shore's home." Or they might say, "They just bombed the AG Gaston Motel." And so then we would wait for later reports to see if anyone was hurt and to hear about the extent of the damage. So bombing started in Birmingham in 1948. They started because of someone buying a house that crossed the imaginary dividing line of boundaries of the white and the black neighborhoods. But then after nothing was done about that particular bombing, they continued. So somewhere in the 60s, we had over 80 unsolved bombings. It was a way of life. And when people would come and try to talk to us after 9/11 about terrorism, certainly not to minimize anything that happened on 9/11 or the pain that was felt, but we said terrorism didn't start on 9/11. It was a way of life in Birmingham. The difference in the bombings that happened prior and the 16th Street bombing was just that in that bombing we lost 4 lives. Prior to that and after that, we did not. This was the only bombing that claimed lives. On September 15th, I came to church about 9:30. I came with 2 younger brothers, Alan and Wendell, put them in their Sunday school class, collected my materials for recording the attendance and the money, and passed that out, and then I sat in my Sunday school class, and about 10:15, I got up to collect these reports. At the end of Sunday school, I would give a summary, so I would always get up a little early to get all of this put together and prepared. And the way our church was built back in the day, if you were going upstairs, all of the children were downstairs, all of the adults were upstairs, but the office was upstairs. So if you were going upstairs, you had to pass the girls' bathroom. So I collected my reports downstairs, and when I got to the bathroom door, I spoke to all of the girls. Cynthia Wesley's father was my elementary school principal. Denise McNair's father was my 9th grade DE, diversified education teacher. All of these girls were very close to me, and Cynthia and I were in a club together, and we had put an article in the newspaper that day, and it said, "Cavalet's Club to meet September 15th at 3 o'clock. So we were excited about the meeting, looking forward to the day and what it would bring. So I said goodbye to them and started up those steps, and when I got to the top of the steps, the office is right there, the phone was ringing in the office, and when I went in, the lady that I worked under, Mrs. Shorter, was not there, so I answered the phone, and the caller on the other end said, 3 minutes. And as quickly as they said that, they hung up. And just because we have so much media presence and TV presence in our church, I know that I took about 15 steps out into the sanctuary before the bomb exploded. Now, the church had gotten numerous bomb threats prior to that, but being children, those were not discussions we were privy to. The adults in the church knew more. We knew what was going on in Birmingham. We kept up with the news, but we didn't know the personal nature of the threats that had come to the church. In the days to follow, on that same day, we went outside, and it would be probably about 4 o'clock that evening before I would know that my friends had never made it out of the bathroom. And in fact, about 2 o'clock, Carol's mother called our house looking for Carol. Some of the people thought that others had taken their children to safety. But about 4 o'clock, we learned that they had never made it out of the bathroom. In the days to come, Dr. Martin Luther King would eulogize these girls, and he would eulogize them as beautiful, innocent, and unoffending. He would also tell us that the blood of these girls might fully come to serve as a redemptive force, not only for Birmingham, but for the rest of the nation. I think that we did see a lot of that come to pass. Life was difficult after the bombing of the church. I completed high school, went on to college, and so forth. But for many years, and I say some of these things in the book, I had a bit of a cloud over me. In today's environment, if we'd had a bombing of a church or lost a classmate, we would probably bring counselors in. We would have some type of discussion where we would share our feelings. But I came to realize over the years, I've met with a lot of reporters and shared these stories on a lot of television stations, including CNN and Oprah and the History Channel. And the question always came up, what did your parents say? How did you handle this at home? And over the years, those questions, just one day it just hit me that we never had any discussions at home. My mother never asked me, are you okay? Do you miss your friends? Would you like to talk about anything that happened? The only discussion that we had in those years was in the days after the bombing, FBI came to our house. And I gave many testimonies to the FBI. Those records or testimonies are on file right now and would later be used in the trials of Bob Cherry, Tom Blanton, and Robert Chambliss. I would be subpoenaed in later years to come and give my account of everything that happened that Sunday and in the years prior. I wanted to read to you just one excerpt. We had a man who was president of a Concerned Citizens Council in Birmingham during the time of the bombings with an S. And I think he wrote a letter to the president, but I think just this little excerpt paints a very vivid picture for you of what life was like. Mr. Thompson said that we always need to look back and reflect and see where we came from, know where we have come from. Dr. King said it's only by looking at where we came from and assessing where we are today that we know how to move forward. So as we ponder what now and where we go from here, listen to this excerpt from one of the concerned citizens of that time regarding the bombings in Birmingham. He says, those few terrifying moments of the blast said what we have been trying to say to the nation for years, that there exists in Alabama the most unconscionable disregard for man and God on the part of some. If the white supremacy consists in the wanton and brutal destruction of worshipers of God in the very house of worship, then I must confess that the church bombers are the most wanton, supreme murderers and cowards the world has ever seen. Only the diseased mind can aspire to reach such depths. On the morning of the bombing, I stood across the street from the church behind carbine-bearing policemen and watched as the covered bodies were brought into waiting ambulances. Policemen drove a small crowd off the street. I sat on a nearby porch. Women seeing the covered bodies being brought from the church cried and screamed without restraint. I could not bring my mind to believe what my eyes saw. It still seems like a tale from some distant land where people know nothing about freedom and democracy. I thought that captured pretty well the horrors of that period in time. Well, The other, this was just a small part of what happened when Dr. King was in Birmingham. This was the result of the marching, and it's safe to say, I think most historians agree today, that it was the marches, the children of Birmingham who marched. Those children helped break the back of segregation in Birmingham. And it is because of them, the thousands that went to jail today, that we finally took the signs down. And I emphasize taking the signs down because people will ask sometimes, has Birmingham changed? Are things different? And I say, well, we've taken the signs down. I think the real question is, have hearts changed? But I still say we took the signs down. Not just the marching, other successful strategies, and many of them I think are still relevant today. I'll just touch on them very briefly in the next minute or so and then just move forward. But we also enacted a bus boycott, much like what you saw in Birmingham, to the point that our bus system was forced to honor all of the people that lived in Birmingham. We enacted a selective buying campaign, which my parents were happy about this campaign because they asked that you not buy clothes for Easter or any other time or shop in stores that did not respect the people. And being one of 6 children, my parents were happy not to have to deal with the matter of Easter dresses and shoes and all of that. So it was great for us because we like wearing just regular clothes to church. What also happened during that time, and I'm mentioning these things because a lot of these things I don't see going on today. I think they're still very relevant, and so I'm mentioning them. We had what we called information meetings. These were meetings where you could come to church and be brought up to date on what was going on in the community. Dr. King's way was that if he was in Chicago, he would bring you up to date on everything that was going on in Alabama and Georgia, Illinois, other parts of the city. If they found that they had programs, for example, Operation Breadbasket in Chicago that was working well, that program might be implemented in other places. So these information meetings were designed to bring you up to date on what the movement was doing and where people were. There were citizenship meetings. Dorothy Cotton would conduct citizenship meetings where they talked about the importance of voting, the requirements for voting. They did tutorials and told people whatever they needed to know to become qualified to walk into an office and to register to vote. There was also adult education for those who could not read or write, and continuing training on nonviolent resistance to injustice. One of the things that was notably present then that we don't see today was the presence of the clergy, the faith community. We had such great respect and reverence for our ministers, and almost every church in Birmingham, we have a roster of churches that opened their doors to the civil rights movement. Clergy was fully engaged, fully involved in everything that was going on. The ministers, they gave financial and human resource support. The community was engaged, as you could see by the marching of the children, and also by just the citizens who cooperated when they said, don't ride the bus, don't do whatever. The citizens cooperated as well. I think the most valuable part of all of this was the continuing reporting of progress so that you knew that you were moving forward. Well, today, as we look around, we know that we have some tremendous issues still facing our nation. Dr. King used to talk about the triple threats with an S, facing our nation. Those threats were, 1, poverty. The second one was racism. And the third one was war. So when we talk about being post-racial, when we talk about have we realized Dr. King's dream, I think if we look at the 3 things that he felt were necessary to acquire, to move to the beloved community, we really began to see that we're really not close even to the beloved community. We're talking about issues in healthcare, education, poverty, war, jobs, and so forth, and I think this panel will address a lot of that. But to the question, what now? Where do we go from here? I went back and read Dr. King's speech, Where Do We Go From Here? And then just based on my own work and the work that we've done in the Black Belt and the Delta and so forth, I just want to leave you with these 4 suggestions or things that I think, my vision as to what we still need to address. And they are not far, they pretty well align with the things that Dr. King told us in the Where Do We Go From Now speech. The first one is just to reaffirm our commitment to the concept of nonviolence. If those of us that are members of the community of faith understand that we can only dispel darkness with light, hate with love, and so forth. So we should be recommitting ourselves to the concept of nonviolence. The second thing is to collectively, all of us, collectively assert our dignity and our worth. Our children need that so desperately. The third thing is to become dissatisfied with the status quo. Dr. King gave us a lot of things in the 60s to be dissatisfied about, but I think if we look around our educational system, our healthcare system, let's not be satisfied simply because we have what we need. Let's not be satisfied with the status quo. And the last item that I would say to you is that we need to re-engage, all of us. The one important component, the engagement of the children, the engagement of the adults, the engagement of the faith community, the engagement of the political leaders. Everyone in Birmingham was engaged. They were part of what was going on, whether their part was driving a car, contributing $5, making sandwiches for people, whatever it was, everyone was engaged. I see such a tremendous disengagement of the people in our country today. If it hasn't landed on our front doorstep, we just don't have an interest in what's happening in the lives of others. So I leave you with that thought and with the final words. When Dr. King was speaking, he gave a sermon about Nicodemus. All of us have heard of Nicodemus, who asked the question, what must I do to be saved? And so Dr. King raised the question. He said, America, what must you do to be saved? And he went on to tell Nicodemus that you must be born again. Being born again means to be restructured, reshaped, changed. And this is what America needs, to be restructured, reshaped, and changed. America, we must be born again. Thank you.